Hey guys, it's Joshua and I'm going to be showing you guys how to do realistic LEGO rendering. This is going to be done with Redshift, but so today we're actually going to be doing this render, which is just a little bike rider from Star Wars, and it's got a few things. It's got like a texture map of like a bitmap, and then it's got normal colors and just another bunch of things. And this is the render I did a little while ago and posted on Reddit, and it did really well, so making the tutorial for that. Alright, so as you can see too in the preview here, that there's only actually one material, and this one material is texturizing the whole model. The reason I did it like this, so it's like if you change one scratch thing, you just have to change it once and you don't have to change it for each individual piece. It takes a little bit longer to set up, but once it's set up, it's obviously a lot quicker. So the first thing we want to do is we actually want to go on to Mech Bricks and find a model that you want. So you can just type in anything. So I'm going to type in a speeder bike. And then this could be any model you like. This is the one I found and used for it. Alright, and it'll import like that, and this is just the 3D view and then rendering editor. You want to go into editor, and once in here it'll import the model, and then you want to make some changes, like you could change individual pieces if you don't like it. You can add something, like say if you want to add another minifigure, you could just drop like a golem from Lord of the Rings. Once you've made your model or found one, you just go to File, Export. You can keep it at this, but I like OBJs, and then Export. And then once you export it, we'll bring it into Cinema 4D. And the next thing you want to do is do this. I'll leave it in the description. It's called surfaceimperfections.com. The website where this guy has about like 52 textures that you can use. You can download the sample, which I'm currently using, and it's got like fingerprint smudges and scratches, but he's got some pretty good stuff. I'm thinking of purchasing it in the future because it really does help out your workflow and getting the realism of your LEGO scene. Alright, so I'm just gonna start the scene from not from ground up because there's really no point of showing you guys how to do the lighting. So I'm just gonna delete the bike. Well, first, actually, let's save as speeder tutorial. So I'm gonna delete the bike, and all this is it's a dome light, and this dome light has an HDR on it, and this is the HDR that I have from my backyard. So this is it here. And then I have a photo that I took with the Batman, which is also my backyard, so we can do that. Those are the two things I added on the dome light. I have a plane with just the material matte shader. This is just to catch the shadows if you want to catch the shadows. So you just come over here and type up matte, drop it down, plug it in, and then change it to background as environment. And then I added a physical sun, which is just what it is. You just import it and then change it to the orientation where you want the sun to land in. But yeah, and then I have a camera, match the perspective of the log by just rotating it, as you can see here. I added a protection tag, so if you right click protection, this is so it doesn't rotate anymore. Like I can't move it. So once you get your perspective match, it's good. This is just kind of a workaround for when you're doing stills. So, and then actually I can delete that because we'll add that later. All right. Then once you do that, you can go File, Merge, and then you want to find your OBJ. So mine's a speeder bike. I'm gonna import that. Keep the scale at 1, or you can change it if you like. But there you go. I'm just gonna scale this down. I could turn off this, and when you start up, your viewport's gonna look like this. Let me just move this guy in the middle here. If you want to have the render thing in the bottom, all you have to do is come up to Redshift, go to render view, grab this little checkered board thing, and then drop it to the bottom. And then you can bring this one, grab the checkboard, and bring it to the side. And then for this, I just did file, or this little thing, and undock. And then I just got rid of it because you don't need it for doing this. So now you have, like, if you click on something, this is the material, and then that's that. So now you can see that when you import it, it's all transparent, and that's obviously not. So you want to highlight all the materials. I'm going to lower this just a little bit. Move that over. Want to highlight all of them, go to basic, turn off transparency, alpha, and reflective. So now we have each of the materials here. And this model is not too bad, so you could go in between each of the brown ones and click them. But what I found is easiest is if you deselect those, click all the brown textures or any textures that are similar, right click, select texture tags and objects. This is going to highlight any material that's brown and put them over here. And then from here you can right click, group, and name this brown. So you want to do this with all of them, just for when we're adding the materials. You don't have to add to each separate one, you can just add it to one. So you can group the blacks, name it black, and you can get the gray, select textures, group, gray, and yeah. So this decorative one is his chest. So you can tell it's got a UV, so that's how you can tell it's this one. I'm just gonna rename this to body because there's only one, and then that's the body. That's not a black one. When it says decorative, or yeah, then you know it's like a UV one that has a texture on it. Then I'm gonna do the rest here quick. Alright, and now you should have all the materials selected in here. And now what you want to do is actually highlight all of them and get rid of them. You don't need these materials because these are standard Cinema 4D materials, and we want a Redshift material. And I'm gonna keep one of the browns so we can reference back to it, and black you don't need. Yeah, I'm just gonna get rid of all these. This is the shadow one, and this is my old material. I guess we don't need that. All right, so then we're gonna come create. We're actually gonna go up to Redshift, materials, material, and there's our thing, and we're gonna name this Lego texture. Right, and once we close all these, we're gonna apply it to each one. I just like keeping the materials. Now if we render, we'll see that we have the vehicle in it. It's got Redshift materials. There's a shadow on it. And now with the Lego guy in it, it's easier to scale. So you can kind of find where you want it to be. Kind of guess the scale you want it to be as well. So I think that's a little bit too big. You can see on the render I did before, I didn't actually have a background. That's because I just turned it off right at the end of rendering. You can do that too if you come up to dome light, turn off your plate back. It will be your background of your HDMI, but then you can just turn that off, and now you have this. The other thing I like to do, just to visualize it a little better, is animate it rotating. So this is usually at 90, but if you change it to 50, it'll be 50 frames. And I want to rotate it not from this pivot point because it's way too wide. So if you click on this little enable axis, go to the move tool, and you just want to move this to go to the middle of the model. So now if you turn it off, rotate it, it rotates from that point. So what I like to do is just add a keyframe at frame 0 and go to 50 and then spin it. If you hold shift, it snaps in 10% increments, and then drop it at 360, and now you have it spinning. If you want, you can right click and then right click and then linear. This is so you want that looping thing I had in the beginning. It'll keep a consistent speed the whole time, and then once it hits frame 50, we'll start over again and go around. Alright, now comes the exciting part. Let's start creating this texture. So what I like to do is I like to just open this up wide, move this up so you can get a good view of this. Thing you could do to help this is if you go to your settings, go to Redshift, go to GI, and then this will be on none, but I just like changing it to brute force, and this gives you a little bit of global illumination. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add reflection roughness, and the way we do that is if we go to texture, we want to find textures. So these are the two textures that come with that pack. There's scratches and smudges. I'm going to import the scratches, and then if we drop a triplanar, bring this into it, go to texture X, and then if you import it, you'll see the way this works. It's like a UV, but it projects the texture on the X-axis, Y-axis, and then the Z-axis. So there's a blending, so it blends all the axes together. And then the scale kind of like, well, changes the scale, so change 0.5 on all of them. It'll get smaller, but then you can see it starts to block out. So I'm going to change it to 0.1 and see what we got. That's not too bad. So you can see the textures. It's got some scratches here and whatnot. And I'm going to drop a ramp. The ramp on input. Put that in there. Change the source from auto to alt. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to crush the whites. You'll see later on, once we put it into the texture, what's actually happening. So we'll put the texture back in. I'm going to change the color to a darker color. I just find when you use a darker color, you can see it a little bit better. Maybe not the black background, but you can see what's happening. So if you actually come with back dome light, I'm going to turn these back on. You can see the background. So color's on black. I'm gonna get the ramp that's connected and bring it into, where is it? The reflections and the reflection weight. And you're gonna see nothing much happen except it's darker. But what we're gonna do is bring up the whites. So if I bring it all the way down, you can start to see that there's some patches of dark and then white. The way this works is so it's the whites are going to be reflective and the darks aren't as reflective. So you can kind of adjust as to how you want. This isn't how you're going to see the scratches. This is just for overall roughness. So if I actually spin this, gonna bring this down. Bring the roughness to about 0.3. So it's Lego's got a bit of a roughness. It's not perfectly reflective. And then you can see there's the reflective there and specular and the little scratches. Next thing we want to do is start adding bump maps. So we're going to do a noise. We're going to drop the noise into the output. And then we're going to scale this up a lot. I do 150. This is going to be those little dimples in the Lego pieces in the plastic. So we're going to do that. Drop down a bump map. Bring this into the texture input and drop this into the overall bump, and then put that one back in the output. And now you can see it's rendering really dark and not. So you just have to turn down the height to like say 0.2. You don't want it to be too noticeable. It's just adding that like roughness to the reflections. You can see, turn this off. There wouldn't be a reflection here, but this bump that we're adding, if we do 0.2 again, it just adds little dimples to catch the reflections and have a roughness. But I might even turn it down one more. We'll start with that, see what happens. Next thing we want to do is copy the noise and put the noise into the output. This is just so you can see it when we put it into the output. Click it, and I'm going to change this to like 2. And what this noise is going to be for is Lego isn't perfect, like the plastic isn't perfectly smooth, it's got little indents in it. So if we use the second noise, we can drop another bump map, put it in texture input, and now you have this problem where you have 2 bump maps and only 1 bump input. So that's when you bring in the bump blender, drop that, put it into the base. Doesn't matter which one's in the base, but I usually just start with a smaller one. Put in bump input, and then put that into the output, and then put the texture into. This is a little confusing. It's like the texture is your main one. That's always going to be in your output, and these bump maps want to be in the bump blender. So, and then combined into the material here. Now you can see there's nothing really happening. That's because what I want to do is change it to additive. So all these will add on, and then the blend width you want to increase. So I just like putting on a 1, and then you can put them all in 1 just so you can see them when you further add more. And then you just want to go to the bump map and change it to like something. So if you look carefully, a bit too much. Now you can see it, but might be a bit too big. So you can see that this is really exaggerated, it's set to 1, but you can see that the light reflects off it different, so it's white, really bright, and then it goes down and then not. So you just kind of want to adjust this so you get a bit of that instead of it just being flat. You get this little bump just to help sell, so it doesn't look as perfect as Lego really isn't if you play around with it a little bit. Then, and from there, what we're going to do is we're going to add the round corners, and this is just going to help with the perfect corners that are in the 3D model. So you just put the bump into the bump input 1, and you can see it's really exaggerated, like these are really rolly now. So I changed it to 0.2, I believe. Or let's go to 0.1, see what it looks like. You can see it does affect in between the pieces. Like if we set it to 0, it's flat. If you set it to like 0.1, it does. I kind of like this, so you can see that each individual piece, it has like the highlight reflecting off of it. This might be a bit too much, so I'm gonna bring it even down a little bit more. 0.5, and then yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Right, and the next thing we're going to do is actually add the edge wear. So for this, you want to go to curvature. Drop that down, put it into output. And what we're trying to do is make the edges white and the other pieces black. So what I always do is start with 0.1. And it gets a pretty good start. And if you click on it, go to revamp, increase the max, or the min, until it starts getting rid of darker spots. If you bring it too much, it'll get rid of everything. So it's kind of find that sweet spot. That doesn't look too bad. Alright. The thing is too, it's like with this, if you want every piece to have edge wear, you can just use this. But a little thing I like doing is whoops, put that back in, is I like bringing another noise in, and then also like a color composite. Put the curvature into the base. I'm gonna put the noise in here so you can kind of see it. It's like I'm trying to make a matte with the noise for the curvature. So like with these white spots will have it, but if it's black it won't. So now if I put this in the blend and then put this in the out, it looks exactly the same. But if you change it from base to multiply, I believe, but you won't see as much. But if you bring in a ramp, put it in between, whoops, put it in between the noise and the blend color. Come on. Move those out a little bit. Change that to Alt. And then if you increase this, you start to see that now it's just going to be these edges are where it's not every edge. So it's like you can kind of play around with this to have like a little bit of random, because not every piece is going to have the same amount of edge wear on it, or at least I don't think so. So I like this, for example, like there's good amount over here, here, and there, but it's all personal preference. It's all personal preference on what you want to do. So you can just keep the curvature and then have it in, or whatever you like. And then what I'm going to do is get this texture, duplicate it, bring it down here, and this is the scratch texture. Bring it into input, and I'm going to make this one smaller. This is going to be for the edges. So if I make it 0.5, 0.5, it's blocky, but that's okay. And then I'm going to grab a bump. Can't type. Bump map. Bring this into the bump map. Go to texture input. Put this into layer 2. Bump input. And then we're going to use the color composite as our layer 2 weight. So it's going to take the matte. Wherever it's white, it's going to display this scratch texture on it, pretty much. So, and then you can increase this if you like. This is a subtle thing. Like you can really, if you adjust your curvature to make your curvature wider, then more of the block will be dented out. And depends how good of a texture you have to see if it has those real good chips in it. But I just found if you have it on and then set it to like 1 or 2, it's kind of nice. You can even put it on negative so the bump is going in, which is probably more realistic. And then go from there. But you can play with that furthermore if you like. So there's that. Alright. And then from there, what we're going to do is actually add the scratches. Like we have the little reflections of the scratches of the roughness. What we want to do is actually add the scratches as a texture. So you can duplicate this one again. Oh, I switched the camera. Switch it back to camera and then block it. What's happening here? I'm gonna duplicate those. scratches. I'm gonna put it in. And then from here, I'm gonna just change the offset because I like the size of it, I believe. We're gonna drop bump map. Put the bump into the texture input. Now you can see that there's no inputs. So what we actually have to do is we have to duplicate the bump blender. Grab the end and put it into the base. And then we're gonna put this into input 0. 1. And then we're gonna put this to the bump input. So now we can add more bump maps instead of just the 3 it allows you to. You can see it's doing this again, so you want to go to the bump map, change it to like -0.2 or something like that. This one is you want to be careful with this one. You don't want to exaggerate it. Like if you put it to something, yes, you can see the scratches now, but there's not many people that have Lego pieces that have a big scratch in it like this. So actually, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make this smaller. I'm gonna put it to 0.7 or 0.6. But so it's like you can see all these scratches on it, which is nice. And then there wouldn't be this many and this many sticking out as much as they do. So what I like to do is just go to the bump map and turn it down quite a bit, so 0.2 or 3. So it's like you can see the fine, the odd one, but like it's not overdone, I guess. I don't know. It's, you can do what you like, obviously, but I find you just gotta be careful with this and don't want to change too much. The other thing is too is you can drop down like a ramp like this one, put it in between, put that in the bump, and just a -0.1, and then you can adjust this to see how much you want. So if you increase the blacks, you'll get less. If you bring it down, you'll get more scratches. So you can adjust if you want more scratches or less, and then go from there. But I'm actually gonna, I liked it how it was before. Alright, but make sure you're saving all the time because you do not want this to crash. Maybe do you, maybe you like redoing your stuff again. But the last thing we're gonna do for the texture is we're gonna add like the fingerprints. So we go to texture, some more, path, we're gonna do the fingerprints. Nope. And we're gonna drop a triplanar again. Texture, texture X, output. The way it works too is if you put in the X, it just copies all of them, like the X, the Y, and the Z. So you like same on each axis. So that's why you want to do the X at least. But then we can increase the blend. The blend is so like on the edges from like the Y project and the X projection. Actually, if we turn this off, we increase it, you'll start to see like the blue and the green blend together. But if we turn it off, then it's sharp. So and for this one, what I like to do is I usually keep it at the size. It works perfectly fine for the most part. Is I like to find a thumbprint. So there's one there. Maybe that's a little bit too big, so let's change this to 0.3. 3. There's a thumbprint. I saw one in the front. There's like a nice greasy spot where your thumb would be. Then you could drop down a ramp. Input. This. Input. Output. You just Alt. I like to invert this. And then bring up the blacks. So now it's wherever the whites will be where the thumbprints and the glossiness will be. So once we could put this back in, it's got the roughness, it's got the scratches, it's got the reflections, but now we're gonna add like a little glossy tone to it. So if you go to coding, go to coat color, you won't see anything because you have to go to coding and then bring up the weight. And then once you saw when I increase that is like 0 and then 1, you'll see this smudge that's created. This is where the smudge is now going to be of the thumbprint. So this is where you get to adjust if you want more of them, if you want less. You can also the other thing you can do too is if you grab this, go over to coding advanced, you can drop it into the bump, and then it creates a little bump map where the thumb would be. It's I think it's not really needed. It's up to you. It adds a little bit more render time, but I don't know if it's really worth it or not. But yeah, so it's like you could spin it here, find different things. So here's a natural good example of the unevenness. You can see like it's darker over here and darker, so it's like his back is extruded a little bit differently. But the thing I don't like here is you can see too many of these reflections from the first thing. So if we come over to texture, go to the first ramp, and bring the whites down. See, less of those, not too much. But we'll see what it looks like with the color on it. Alright, so now we have that. Let's do a control save. What we're going to do is actually add tags to each of the materials now. So what I'm going to do is put the black above because the black's already on 0. I'm going to right click, go to Redshift objects, put that to the end, and then by holding control just duplicating them over. So I'm going to highlight all of them, go to object ID, go to override. The black I want to be 0. This one I want to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is going to be the way we use the materials. This is going to be the way we use the shader to indicate which one's which. And then when we add a separate material, the program will figure out which one it is. So what we need to do is go to the materials. This is the part that takes a little bit of while, or takes a little bit of time, but it's well worth it because then it makes adjusting it so much easier. I'm going to name this black material. Bring it up, Control C. And then I'm just going to name it the next one. So the next one's light gray. And just do as many as you have. So brown. Alright, from here we're gonna actually, this is the tedious part. It's not difficult, this is a little bit tedious. Is you have to add each of the materials to it. What I like to do is just make them as close as possible. Move these up. And then, so this ramp here, you can rename them if you want to go to like basics and be like reflections. So you know what it is. So this one, you just want to grab it, put it in here. Just put the reflection on the reflections. And the same for the bump. Oops. I want to grab the bumps. And then the coat. Right. And now nothing has changed, but we're gonna add a material or a shader switch. For the shader switch, we're gonna do an integer user data. We're gonna put this into the selector, and then from here, we're gonna put this into the output. And you gotta put each shader to each. So this is 0. This is shader 0, and it's the black. Like you see, black object ID is 0. Then you want to bring the second one, put it to 1, and so forth. And you can see it's all black, but if you go to the integer, you're gonna go to object and object ID. It's gonna be the same, but now you change this. Go to basics, diffuse. Change this to a light gray. It's gonna change those light gray blocks to it. And this is why I kept the brown. So if you just double click it, you just copy the color for the brown, go to color, paste it. This one's a little bit light, but it gives you a good starting point. Then you just bring it down a little bit. What I've found too is there's a little arrow here. If you drop it down, you can change it, and it changes on real time instead of going through here and changing it, nothing happening until you press OK. So then you just want to do that with each color. So this is a gray. You want to make it gray, obviously. It's a little bit lighter actually. White. And then the body is the one that has the texture on it. What you need to do is actually come over here and go to texture. Drop that down, go to path, go to maps, decorative, and find the texture that you had. Drop it into the base diffuse color. And now you have the texture. Like if you rotate it, you can see the texture map is on it. Everything. Save that. That's a good start. What you can do is you can end it right here if you like. The next step is just kind of adjusting little things. But what I find that helps quite a bit is if I get this. I'm going to grab this curvature and this color composite. I'm going to move it over here. We're going to go to material. And then a material blender. So what I want to do is get the brown. I want to put the brown into the input base material. I want to get this second material and put it into the base layer 1. I'm just going to change this to something really bright so we can see what's happening. And then with this curvature, I want to go to the blue layer 1 and then blend color. And then I'm going to put this into that shader. So what essentially is happening is instead of the brown, which is the second, I'm putting it into this blender with the new material, which is this the color, and then with the curvature that we made before, which is the edge wear thing, I'm putting the edge wear into the blend color and then this new material into layer 1, and then I'm putting that input into that. And what this does is this material that is blue is we can change it to, let me paste that brown again, and if I increase this, I'm just gonna put the curvature in so we can see it a little bit better. Is now all these edges are gonna have like a lighter brown to it, and this happens when from the wear of the Lego pieces, and then you can get that edge. So I'm gonna put it back into the blend so that it's not everywhere, so it's just in a few spots like that. If you want more of it, you can always just go to the ramp and bring the black down. But this is pretty much just so you can add that extra little detail around the edges. But this is something you don't also want to exaggerate. Like you see before, it's too bright. Like this brown piece would never get this. So it's like, you just kind of want to find a little bit lighter than what it is, not do too much. Yeah, like that. I like that where it's like there's darker brown, then there's a hint of it. There's not a whole lot, but it's something you don't really notice, but it does help with the effect quite a bit. And you can do this with all of them. So if you want to change it to the white or the grays, you can. It's a little bit more. It's pretty much one more step, but if you pretty much just have to copy these two, so material and then second material. You're gonna put this into the blend, this material into the layer 1. You're gonna grab this black, put it into the base, and put the base into the 1. Now you can see like there's orange on the black, but with this new material, you can do just change it to like maybe a gray. Now you can see there's a bit of a gray edge to it. But yeah, that's pretty much how to get those edge wears and the colors in. If you want to render it a little animation, the best way is I just changed it to 128. Max sample is a bit low. I'd go to at least 256, but just for a quick animation, then you could do that. Then output, just go to all frames, change your aspect ratio, and then hit render. But yeah, that pretty much sums up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll find that little animation I made before. Go to open file location. Oop. So this is what you would get if you animated it with the linear. You can make a loop. I added a bit of motion blur afterwards because rendering motion blur from After Effects or Cinema 4D is a little bit slower than After Effects, I find. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. It was fun making this one, and I hope you guys make some cool Lego renders and whatnot. And if you enjoyed, please leave a like or subscribe, and yeah, have a good one. Bye.